One of the first things you must understand about personal value is that people rarely appreciate what they can access without limits. When something is constantly available, the mind begins to treat it as ordinary. This is why your time becomes less valuable when you give it away carelessly. If everyone can reach you whenever they want, if every message receives an immediate response, if every request receives a yes, and if every person can demand your attention without consequence, you slowly teach people that your time has little cost. You may believe that being available makes you valuable. You may think that always helping, always responding, and always showing up proves that you are loyal, generous, or important. But there is a difference between being generous and being endlessly accessible. Generosity is a choice. Constant availability becomes an expectation. And once your availability becomes an expectation, people stop appreciating it. Look at how easily people become comfortable with access. At first, someone may be grateful when you help them. They thank you for your time. They recognize the effort you made. But if you continue doing the same thing every time they ask, eventually the favor stops feeling like a favor. It becomes normal. Then, the moment you refuse, they may act as if you have done something wrong. This is how value disappears without you noticing. Your time is not simply the hours on a clock. It represents your attention, energy, focus, experience, and opportunity. Every hour you give to someone is an hour you cannot invest somewhere else. When you spend your attention on meaningless conversations, unnecessary arguments, constant notifications, and people who contribute nothing to your growth, you are not merely wasting time. You are spending a resource that can never be recovered. This is why you must become selective. You do not need to answer every message immediately. You do not need to accept every invitation. You do not need to explain why you are busy. You do not need to make yourself available simply because someone expects you to be. There is power in having a life that does not revolve around responding to everyone else. When people know you have priorities, they begin to understand that your attention has a limit. You have work to complete, skills to develop, goals to pursue, health to protect, relationships to nurture, a future to build. Your life should not become an open door through which everyone walks whenever they feel bored, lonely, or in need of something. This does not mean becoming arrogant or deliberately ignoring people. It means creating boundaries around your availability. You can still be kind without being constantly accessible. You can help people without becoming their permanent solution. You can care without allowing others to consume every part of your attention. The deeper principle is scarcity. What is rare is noticed. What is unlimited is often taken for granted. If your presence is everywhere, your presence loses impact. But when you are intentional about where you appear, who receives your attention, and what deserves your energy, your presence begins to carry greater weight. Imagine two people. One is always available. Everyone knows they will answer, come, help, listen, and adjust whenever requested. The other has a structured life. They respond when they can, protect their schedule, and say no when something does not align with their priorities. Which person's time is more likely to be respected? The answer is obvious. Your goal is not to make people chase you. Your goal is to stop chasing everyone else. When you stop giving unlimited access to your time, you create room to build the qualities that make you genuinely valuable. You can develop your skills, strengthen your discipline, and become difficult to replace. And that leads naturally to the next level of value, becoming someone whose presence is valuable because of what you bring, not simply because you are difficult to reach. Your time becomes expensive when you stop giving it away as if it were worthless. There is a mistake people make when they want to be respected. They demand respect before they have developed anything worth respecting. They become distant, speak with unnecessary arrogance, or try to appear important, believing that an attitude of superiority will increase their value. But people eventually see through appearances. You cannot create lasting value by pretending to be valuable. You create it by becoming useful, capable, disciplined, and difficult to replace. The world does not reward potential forever. At some point, potential must become ability. Think about someone who constantly talks about what they are going to accomplish. They announce their plans, describe their ambitions, and tell everyone how successful they will become. but when an opportunity arrives, they lack the knowledge, discipline, or consistency required to produce results. Their words may create temporary attention, but attention is not the same as value. Now consider someone who quietly develops a rare skill. They study when nobody is watching. They practice when there is no applause. They solve problems that others avoid. They become reliable under pressure. They do not need to repeatedly announce their importance because their results communicate it for them. That person becomes expensive. Why? Because replacing them becomes difficult. This is the deeper meaning of becoming valuable. It is not about demanding a higher price for your presence. It is about developing qualities that people cannot easily find elsewhere. Your knowledge, judgment, discipline, creativity, emotional stability, communication, experience, and ability to solve difficult problems can all become sources of value. The more rare your combination of qualities becomes, the less you need to chase recognition. This principle applies beyond careers or money. It applies to relationships, friendships, leadership, and personal identity. A person who is emotionally stable during chaos becomes valuable. A person who can keep confidential information becomes valuable. A person who can be trusted to follow through becomes valuable. A person who thinks clearly when everyone else is reacting becomes valuable, not as something important. None of these qualities require you to beg for respect. They create respect naturally. This is why you should stop focusing so much on how people perceive you and start focusing on what you are actually becoming. Instead of asking, how can I make people think I am important? Ask, what can I develop that makes my contribution genuinely important? That question changes everything. If you want to become difficult to replace, become excellent at something. If you want your opinions to carry weight, develop knowledge. If you want people to trust you, become consistent. If you want your presence to matter, stop arriving empty-handed. Bring insight, bring competence, bring solution, bring calmness. Bring something that improves the environment around you. Value is created through contribution, and contribution requires sacrifice. You cannot become exceptional while spending every hour seeking entertainment. You cannot develop mastery while constantly chasing approval. You cannot build rare abilities while allowing every distraction to control your attention. Becoming valuable requires periods when you choose your long-term development over immediate comfort. This is where self-control becomes connected to personal value. The person who can control their attention can learn faster. The person who can control their emotions can make better decisions. The person who can control their impulses can remain committed to difficult goals. The person who can tolerate being unnoticed can build something meaningful before demanding recognition. Do not rush to prove that you are valuable. Build value until proof becomes unnecessary. And remember that being valuable does not mean believing you are better than everyone else. It means understanding what you bring to the table and continually improving it. Humility and excellence can exist together. In fact, the most valuable people often have little need to announce their superiority because they are too focused on refining their abilities. When you become useful, reliable, disciplined, and rare, people begin to treat your presence differently. Your value rises when your abilities become difficult to replace, not when your ego becomes difficult to tolerate. There is a hidden cost to being too easy to please. When you constantly say yes, accept every request, tolerate every behavior, and adjust yourself to keep everyone comfortable, you may believe you are creating good relationships. In reality, you may be teaching people that your standards have no real weight. The moment people discover that you will sacrifice almost anything to avoid disappointing them, they begin to expect sacrifice from you. This is why becoming valuable requires more than developing skills. It requires developing standards. A person without standards is easy to access because there are no conditions attached to their attention. They will answer whenever called, agree whenever challenged, forgive every behavior, and remain available even when they are being treated poorly. Eventually, their generosity becomes invisible because everyone has become accustomed to it. The problem is not kindness. The problem is kindness without boundaries. You can be generous without allowing people to exploit you. You can be understanding without accepting repeated disrespect. You can be flexible without abandoning your principles. The difference is that you decide what you will give and what you will not tolerate. Consider what happens when someone repeatedly cancels plans with you at the last moment. If you always accept the excuse, rearrange your schedule, and continue making yourself available, you communicate something without saying it. Your time can be disrupted without consequence. But if you calmly make it clear that your time matters and stop reorganizing your life around someone else's inconsistency, the dynamic changes. Your standards teach people how to interact with you. This does not mean trying to control other people. You cannot force someone to respect you. What you can control is their access to you. If someone repeatedly behaves in a way that violates your standards, you can reduce your involvement. If someone constantly demands attention but offers nothing in return, you can stop providing unlimited access. If someone repeatedly crosses a boundary, you can create distance. A boundary without a consequence is often just a request. You do not need to announce every boundary dramatically. Sometimes your actions are enough. You simply stop participating in situations that consistently diminish you. You stop explaining why you deserve basic respect. You stop negotiating with people who have already shown that they do not care about your limits. This is where many people fail because they fear being disliked. They believe that if they say no, someone will become angry. If they become selective, someone will call them selfish. If they stop tolerating disrespect, someone will accuse them of changing. So they continue sacrificing themselves to preserve relationships that were only comfortable because they had no standards. But ask yourself what you are actually preserving. A relationship that requires you to constantly abandon yourself is not stability. It is dependence. You become more valuable when your yes means something. If you say yes to everything, your agreement carries little weight. But when people know you consider requests carefully, your acceptance becomes meaningful, your attention becomes meaningful, your time becomes meaningful. This is the psychology of scarcity applied to personal boundaries. Do not make yourself artificially difficult. Do not create unnecessary games or pretend to be unavailable just to make people chase you. That is not value. It is manipulation. Real value comes from having a life, standards, and priorities that exist independently of other people's demands. When you have standards, you become selective about who receives your energy. You may still help someone, but because you choose to, not because you fear their reaction. You may forgive someone, but forgiveness does not require unlimited access. You may love someone, but love does not require tolerating every behavior. You may understand someone's struggles while still refusing to let those struggles become an excuse for repeated disrespect. The stronger your standards become, the less you need to announce your worth. People learn that your presence comes with expectations of mutual respect. They understand that your time is limited and your energy is not something they can consume without thought. And most importantly, you begin respecting yourself enough to walk away from situations that continually make you smaller. Stop trying to be easy for everyone to keep. Become someone whose time, attention, trust, and presence are valuable because they are given intentionally, not because they are freely available to anyone who asks. There is a strange law of human attention. People often value what they cannot have immediately more than what is constantly available to them. This does not mean you should play games, disappear deliberately, or manipulate people into chasing you. It means you must understand the psychological difference between availability and scarcity. When your attention is endlessly available, people become comfortable consuming it without thinking about its value. When your attention is directed, limited, and intentional, people begin to recognize that receiving it is a privilege rather than an entitlement. This is why you must stop chasing attention. The person who constantly seeks validation gives other people too much power. They check who viewed their message, wonder why someone has not replied, repeatedly reach out to people who show little interest, and change their behavior simply to remain noticed. Their attention is always moving outward, searching for confirmation that they matter. But the more desperately you chase attention, the less valuable that attention becomes. Imagine someone who constantly messages a person who rarely responds. At first, they may believe persistence demonstrates interest. But eventually, the dynamic becomes one-sided. One person is chasing, the other is deciding whether to respond. The person who keeps pursuing has already surrendered the balance of power because their emotional state now depends on someone else's reaction. The solution is not to become cold. The solution is to redirect your attention toward your own life, build something that deserves your focus, develop your skills, improve your health, strengthen your finances, read, learn, create, work. Spend time with people who genuinely value you. Pursue goals that continue moving forward whether someone notices them or not. When your life becomes full, you stop treating another person's attention as the center of your existence. This changes the way people experience you. You are no longer constantly asking to be seen because you are already engaged in something meaningful. You are no longer trying to force conversations because you have other priorities. You are no longer desperate to prove that you are interesting because you are actually becoming more interesting through your experiences, knowledge, and growth. This is where healthy scarcity emerges naturally. You do not need to manufacture mystery. You simply stop giving everyone unlimited access to you. If someone repeatedly ignores your messages, you do not need to send 5 more. If someone consistently cancels plans without respecting your time, you do not need to keep chasing them. If someone only contacts you when they need something, you do not need to remain permanently available. Your withdrawal should not be a punishment. It should be a recognition of reality. There is also a deeper lesson here. When you stop chasing attention, you begin discovering who actually values you. Some people only interact with you because you constantly initiate. Once you stop carrying the entire relationship, the connection disappears. That disappearance can hurt, but it also gives you information. You learn who is interested in you and who is simply accustomed to your effort. This is why silence can sometimes reveal more than confrontation. Do not announce that you are pulling away. Do not create dramatic posts designed to make someone wonder where you are. Do not disappear simply to provoke a reaction. Those behaviors still place your attention on the other person. You are still trying to control what they think and feel. True independence looks different. You simply become busy with your own life. Your attention becomes selective because your goals demand it. Your presence becomes less frequent because you have somewhere meaningful to be. Your conversations become more intentional because you no longer need constant stimulation. Your relationships become healthier because you are no longer begging people to participate in them. People begin to notice the difference, not because you forced them to miss you, but because you stopped forcing yourself into spaces where you were not genuinely valued. The most powerful form of scarcity is not making yourself unavailable. It is becoming so committed to your own growth that you no longer need to chase anyone's attention to feel valuable. Stop asking the world to notice you and start building a life that naturally deserves your attention first. The highest form of personal value is not simply becoming difficult to access. It is becoming difficult to replace. Anyone can pretend to be unavailable. Anyone can stop answering messages, create distance, or act as though they are too important for ordinary people. But artificial scarcity has no lasting power. Eventually, people discover whether there is something substantial behind the image. If you want your presence to carry real weight, you must develop qualities that are genuinely rare. This begins with mastery. Choose something worth becoming exceptional at, and then give it enough attention that your ability begins to separate you from the average. Most people remain replaceable because they spread themselves across too many distractions without becoming truly skilled at anything. They start many things, abandon them when progress becomes difficult, and constantly search for something easier. Their knowledge remains shallow, their discipline remains inconsistent, and their contribution remains ordinary. You cannot become expensive while remaining ordinary in every direction. You need depth. Develop a skill that solves problems. Learn to communicate clearly. Learn to think under pressure. Learn how to negotiate, create, lead, analyze, teach, build, or organize. The specific ability matters less than the principle. Become unusually competent at something valuable. But skill alone is not enough. There are many talented people who cannot be trusted. They may be intelligent, creative, or highly capable, but they disappear when pressure arrives. They make promises and fail to keep them. They become emotional when criticized. They abandon responsibilities when the work becomes uncomfortable. Reliability makes ability far more valuable. Imagine two people with similar skills. One is brilliant but inconsistent. The other may be slightly less talented, but always prepared, calm, dependable, and willing to finish what they start. Over time, who becomes more valuable? Usually, the person who can be trusted. This is because rare value is created by combinations. Skill combined with discipline, intelligence combined with emotional control, confidence combined with humility, ambition combined with patience, creativity combined with reliability. The combination is what makes you difficult to replace. This principle applies to relationships as well. A valuable person is not simply someone who provides entertainment or attention. They bring qualities that improve the lives of the people around them. They can listen without immediately judging. They can remain calm when others panic. They can keep private information private. They can tell the truth without unnecessary cruelty. They can support someone without becoming dependent on them. These qualities are rare because they require self-control. And self-control is built through repetition. Every time you resist an impulse, keep a promise, complete difficult work, learn from criticism, or remain calm under pressure, you are building a reputation with yourself. Eventually, these behaviors become part of your character. You do not need to constantly perform confidence because your consistency creates it naturally. There is another important dimension. Develop your own perspective. Do not become a copy of everyone around you. Learn from others, but think independently. Read deeply. Observe people. Study patterns. Question assumptions. Develop the ability to see what others overlook. When your thinking becomes original, your contribution becomes harder to imitate. This is what truly separates expensive people from those who only appear expensive. The expensive person has something beneath the surface. Their knowledge cannot be downloaded instantly. Their judgment cannot be copied overnight. Their discipline was built through years of effort. Their character was tested through difficult circumstances. That kind of value cannot be manufactured through appearances. And once you become difficult to replace, you no longer need to constantly chase people for recognition. You can walk into a room without begging to be noticed because you know what you bring. You can leave environments that undervalue you because you trust your ability to create value elsewhere. You can say no because you are not terrified of losing every opportunity. Your goal is not to make people afraid of losing you. Your goal is to become someone whose absence naturally creates a difference because your contribution was genuinely meaningful. Become rare in your skills, disciplined in your habits, reliable in your character, and independent in your thinking, and your value will no longer depend on how loudly you announce it. There comes a point in your development when you must understand that your value is not fully recognized by how much you give, but by what happens when you are no longer available to give it. This is where many people misunderstand absence. They think withdrawing means playing games, ignoring people to make them jealous, or disappearing so someone will chase them. That is not real power. Real power is much quieter. It is the ability to leave situations where your presence is repeatedly undervalued without begging anyone to recognize what they are losing. If people can disrespect you while remaining certain that you will always stay, your presence has become guaranteed. And when something feels guaranteed, people often stop examining its value. This is why your absence can sometimes communicate more clearly than your words. Imagine a person who is always solving problems for everyone around them. They answer every call, provide every favor, listen to every complaint, and constantly make themselves available. Eventually, people stop seeing these actions as gifts. They become part of the environment. The person is always there, so nobody asks what their presence is worth. Then one day they stop. Not dramatically, not angrily. They simply become more selective. They stop volunteering for every problem. They stop explaining themselves. They stop chasing people who do not reciprocate. Suddenly, others notice the space they have left behind. This is not because absence magically creates value. The value was already there. Constant availability had simply made it invisible. But there is an important distinction. Do not withdraw to manipulate. Withdraw because you have recognized your own worth. If someone repeatedly disrespects you, you do not need to threaten them with your departure. You do not need to say, one day you will realize what you lost. You simply decide that your energy belongs somewhere it can be respected. This requires emotional independence. The hardest part of leaving is often not the physical distance. It is the desire to be understood before you go. You want the other person to admit that they were wrong. You want them to recognize your effort. You want an apology, an explanation, or some final confirmation that you mattered. But sometimes waiting for that recognition keeps you trapped. You cannot make someone value you by explaining your value to them. If they repeatedly take your presence for granted, more explanation may only create another opportunity for them to dismiss you. Sometimes the most powerful statement is a change in behavior. You become less available. You stop participating in one-sided dynamics. You stop offering unlimited access to your attention, and then you continue with your life. This is where many people fail because they withdraw physically but remain emotionally attached. They stop contacting someone but spend every day checking whether that person has noticed. They leave a relationship but constantly monitor social media to see if the other person misses them. They stop talking but secretly hope for a message. That is not freedom. You are still being controlled by the same person, only from a distance. True absence begins when you stop needing a reaction. You no longer care whether they chase you. You no longer need them to regret losing you. You no longer require their approval before you can move forward. Your attention returns to your own goals, your own growth, and the people who genuinely value your presence. This is the final transformation from being free to becoming expensive. You stop giving yourself away without thought. Your time becomes selective. Your skills become valuable. Your standards become clear. Your attention becomes intentional. Your presence becomes meaningful because it is no longer guaranteed to everyone. But remember, being expensive does not mean becoming arrogant, selfish, or emotionally unavailable. It means understanding that your life has value and treating your time, energy, attention, and relationships accordingly. You do not need to make people chase you. You need to stop chasing people who have already shown you that they do not value what you bring. When you can walk away without begging, remain silent without seeking revenge, and continue growing without needing anyone to regret losing you, you have reached a powerful level of independence. Your greatest value appears when you no longer need to convince anyone of it.